Welcome to the Confessions of a Group X Instructor podcast. For group exercise junkies and enthusiastic classgoers, we'll explore and uncover authentic, thought-provoking, and heartwarming industry education and inspiration from entertaining, badass fitness pros. And now your host, creator of Warrior Rhythm, Warrior Strength, Warrior Combat, Warrior Revolution, and Warrior Kids Group fitness brands, Ellen DeWord. Here we grow.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am so excited. I have like two of my favorite fitness leaders on this episode. Really, the most dynamic duo out there, Lauren and Tricia. Thank you guys for hopping on.
Thank you for having us. We're so excited to be here.
Yeah, delighted. Our honor. Jeez.
And Lauren's like in the process of moving, so she's like, she's just like between boxes in here and
doing what we got to do.
All right. So I actually think, so my audience is a bunch of group fitness instructors and some fitness managers, some admins. And I really do think that my particular crowd already knows who you two ladies are, but I'm so excited to like get to know you both better and to talk about all the exciting things that are kind of on the horizon for both of you right now. And just, you guys have lived such, beautiful fitness careers already. And I'm excited to learn from you today. And so I thought I would start off by asking Tricia to just kind of tell us about herself. And she's got like, there's a lot there. So I can't wait. I just want you to take us on your fitness journey. When did group fitness become part of your life, and why and how, and where have you been and where are you today?
Oh boy. Well, thank you for having me. It's such a fun experience and such an honor to be here. So I started in the industry 30 years ago. I was a dancer and was studying dance at the University of Washington. And I was sort of unceremoniously ousted out of the dance community because I really wasn't going to make it as a professional dancer, really more from a body type perspective. Like I was not meant to be a ballerina. And I also sort of saw the writing on the wall in terms of making a living as a dance teacher. At the time, it was a pretty tough industry to go into. It wasn't quite like it is now, where there's a lot of different ways to do that. So I I was dancing at I was doing rehearsals at this studio that Carrie Anderson owned, which she's a kind of world famous fitness instructor, ended up becoming my mentor, of course. I was doing dance rehearsals for a modern jazz company there called Moaz here in Seattle. And we finished rehearsal, and of course I walk outside and there's like 100 people waiting to get into this high-low aerobics class. And it was Carrie Anderson's class. And I stayed. I was like the last one allowed in the room because it was so oversold and packed. And it was sort of the best of, because she was a Joffrey dancer, it was sort of the best of dance meets fitness. And I think it was kind of taking that class just sort of changed my world. And then I immediately was like, well, I can do that. I'm a dance major. I was not a major, I was a minor. And I just thought, oh, I can do that. And I auditioned for her like 2 weeks later, thinking that I actually knew what I was doing. And I was 17. And she didn't hire me because I was so not ready. And her gym at the time was like the mecca for group fitness. It was sort of right when group fitness started, like in 1990, I want to say 92. And so I went and got a job teaching fitness at the UW Hec Ed Pavilion, which is the student organization. So that's sort of how I started, very accidentally, and just kind of quickly knew that I loved it. I mean, I fell in love with it. And at the time, there were only 3 or 4 gyms in Seattle. And I started teaching as much as I could, or whoever would hire me. And it was sort of one of the hardest jobs to get. Nobody could get the job, right? So none of us gave up. You didn't really need subs because it didn't matter if you had a broken arm or the flu, you showed up to class, because at the time, it was like 90 to 100 people waiting. And I think I was making like, $16, which was like the highest paid fitness sessions in the city at the time. And so, yeah, that's how it started. And then in 1999, when kickboxing was a big thing, I partnered with Puma randomly and wanted to open up a kickboxing studio. So I partnered with Puma. We opened a gym called Puma Kicks. It was right when Oscar de la Hoya was working for them, and they wanted to go into that realm. And I quickly realized that doing just one modality in a studio was going to be very difficult. So got rid of the Puma Kicks and opened up Urban Fitness, which was a gym I owned for about 7.5 years. And in the middle of all of that, I learned that programming and really, programming for consumers was my sweet spot. Like I could see what was coming down the pipeline. So when striptease became a thing, I was like, well, I'm an ex-dancer. I'm going to drive to Canada and learn how to teach striptease from real strippers and bring it back home.
This is beautiful. This is the kind of thing that needs to be on this podcast. I didn't know this about you.
I didn't know about Canada. I didn't know about Canada and the strippers. I'm learning something.
Yeah. So did you teach it like were you on a chair? Did you bring in poles? Like more about this?
We did. In fact, our tagline was no pole, just soul. So it was all center floor. But when I went to Canada, in Canada, the striptease in Canada is a very different thing than it was here in Washington State at the time. I think it's probably evolved here too, but at the time here, it was not an art form. Up there, it was sort of an art form. So I went up and took a ton of lessons and then created that program. And I still owned the gym and I was teaching at conferences already. And then I brought striptease to conferences, which was totally embarrassing. And I can tell you some very big names in our industry looked at me like I had 5 heads and that I was insane. And then they would come to my booth, like at Idea World. At one point, I had a booth and there were like 200 people waiting to buy a tank top. And, it was like, everyone was like making fun of me until they were like, oh my God, what is she doing? This is whatever she's doing. I want to do something like it. And so then it became, stripping with the gliding discs, striptease with, everyone was like, how do we make what we're doing sexy? Because at the time that was in. So that took off, and then I closed my gym when the building was being torn down, and that was great. It was really good timing. I was not a great gym owner by any means. I didn't do good things in terms of like, if somebody said they couldn't afford the gym, I would just be like, that's okay, just come on in, growing up with a single mom, you're like, that's your mentality. If a single mom walks in the door with kids and says they want to work out, you're like, please do, don't worry about it. So I wasn't great at that, but I had a really good instructor group and had a great experience. And then I have managed clubs since that closed. But mainly I really went into education. And with striptease, actually, I started in the production world. So the Urban Striptease video was produced. The original was produced like a 6-camera shoot, almost like a motion picture style shoot, because we were initially going into an infomercial with it. So we were testing it with 2 infomercial companies. So that was a really big shoot, and I learned a lot then. And then I kept getting on sets as a cast member, and then I did a couple producing roles.
And the first time you had been kind of like in front of a camera doing stuff, because I do know like that's a whole different level of skill and a great skill that we sometimes have the opportunity to learn. Okay. All right.
Yes. And then I got married and had a child, and that sort of slowed a lot of things down from the production perspective. And I focused mainly on education, and would on occasion take on projects. If they were shooting something, up here in Seattle, they were shooting something, I forget, it was actually a sexy program as well. So I sat on set and did production work for that. But for the most part, I went into education and was managing clubs, and Bar Above came along at the right time. I just had my daughter. She's 13 now. So that was 13 years ago. And I just knew that bar had to take off because I'd been in New York City taking tons of classes. And I, at the time, didn't know Lauren, but I knew Leslie, and Leslie and I had been traveling the world together.
Can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a question related to like you sort of having like foresight and seeing trends and seeing things coming? So is it something like, is that that happening here? Like, are you seeing bar as being the next trend at this point and you're just like on it?
At that time, yes. I knew whenever you're in a city like San Francisco or New York or LA and you're taking classes and you see buzz and energy, and it's not just in like one class, like there's always one-offs, right? There's like there was a studio in New York where you'd go into a freezer and take classes, like one place, right? And yeah, that was full, but there was no more than one. Like nobody else was doing that. But when you go into a major market like that and you start to see it's in every neighborhood, it's in every nook, it's everywhere, it's becoming mainstream. You then have to look at that trend and say, how do I make it mainstream enough to work in a YMCA or a high-end studio? It has to be it has to be something you can replicate. It has to be something that talks to the average consumer and has to be affordable. And that's where my brain always goes.
I see. You have to make it palatable, for lack of a better word, accessible, doable for a boutique, for a 24-hour fitness, for like the whole gamut.
Yeah, yeah, which is a fine line, right? It's really hard to do. And then I kept producing videos here and there. So I don't know. I've been a part of a lot of DVDs and even some VHS tapes. But then Leslie and I partnered together, which was wildly successful. And about 3 years into that, Shannon Fable, who's a really well-known fitness instructor, you all know probably, she introduced me to Lauren and said, you have to meet her. She's in the bar category and she is she's the missing piece between you and Leslie. So I walked in and took Lauren's class at a conference in Chicago. I just was sitting there and I just remember like 10 minutes in, I was like, oh, this is what we're missing.
Yeah, my heart is done. So Shannon Fable was your Cupid.
Yes. And actually she's very much been my Cupid for a lot of people, quite frankly. Like in fact, just yesterday, she introduced me to somebody else. So Shannon has that way of connecting people. And I think with Lauren as well, it's sort of one of those things. That's why she runs the ACE, American Council on Exercise pages, that there's always this connection she does.
Okay, so 10 minutes into watching Lauren and you're in love.
Yeah, I'm like, this is it. And, Lauren is a different generation than me, actually, which is kind of cool. It's always fun to meet somebody in business that is always a surprise and delight. Like, so, like the thing about Lauren, it was always that people get really, and I'm sure this happens with you as well, Ellen, people meet people like you and Lauren and they're like, oh, well, they're so pretty and cute. There's this like very superficial band-aid that like people kind of, they think they're complimenting, but they're also like putting this like very specific judgment on somebody who's attractive or adorable. Sometimes, like I get that with Lauren a lot. They're like, "Oh, she's so adorable." I'm like, she also has her master's degree, so So that was always a funny thing, is that I'm like, I met somebody who's in a younger generation than I am. That's a huge win, because you cannot operate from one point of view, in my generation. So it was so great to both meet Lauren, and then also because there's nobody that works harder or smarter. So it just kind of balanced our system out. And so yeah, that's sort of how the two of us came together. And what I'm doing now, I still love to take on side projects. I work, I'm head of programming for Idea World, which is really a programming, right? It's really like a big group fitness schedule. And it's a nutty procedure, right? It's a huge undertaking, but it's exactly that. It's just really a group fitness schedule. So I take on projects all the time, and I love doing on-air work when I can. I like doing behind the scenes work. I worked for Amazon for 2 years on the Amazon Halo project as their director, and worked with them on content. So I mean, honestly, anything in fitness I take on. The worst part is that I'm always afraid to say no, because as a contractor, you're like, what if there's not work in a month? And luckily, knock on wood, even during the pandemic, there was ample work in our industry. So that's my story.
Interesting that you said that about the idea schedule being like a macrocosm of a group fitness schedule. I had never thought about it like that, but it makes perfect sense. And I do know what it means to balance a group fitness schedule. Like there's so many it's such a jigsaw puzzle. So
Yeah.
yours is probably like my jigsaw puzzle is probably like 750 pieces, and your jigsaw puzzle is probably like 100,000 pieces.
It's insane. It's insane, but it's going to be amazing, and you're both presenting at it. So
yes, it's going to be fantastic. She said amazing.
I can't wait. I want to circle back to something before we go to Lauren. The Carrie Anderson, you said she didn't hire you.
Yeah.
Maybe I should.
She laughs about a lot now.
Maybe we should come back. Did you ever end up working for her?
No. What's so funny is that there was a competitive gym. So what's funny is she couldn't hire me at the time, which she shouldn't have. I was terrible. But then her competitor heard about me like 2 months later from the University of Washington, and they just scooped me up and they just kept paying me more. And so Carrie's been at my, everything from my wedding to my, birthday parties to Carrie's still like really near and dear to me. So the big joke between us, of course, is like the best thing that ever happened to me was Carrie not hiring me, because it jump started this whole process of me having to work on so many things to get to another space. So she's a really huge influence on me. If I ever get lost in fitness, I go take one of her classes, or if I just need a reminder of why I'm doing what I'm doing, I might just go have coffee with her. She's a really big influence in my life and a lot of fitness instructors' world. So I was pretty lucky.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to circle back to Tricia and kind of like tease out some lessons that she's learned for you guys and for me to learn from today. But before we do, I'm going to ask Lauren to do the same thing. Just kind of share with us your journey. Like, how did you find group fitness? And, when did you start and why did you start and where are you and why are you in Houston? And like, just bring us up to speed on Lauren George.
Sure. Well, again, thank you so much for having me, for having us. It is such an honor and a delight. And it's always fun to get to chat with other group fitness minded people. So yes, my journey also started like Tricia in the university. I was at Texas A&M University and took a step aerobics class as my kinesiology my first semester. I was a political science and Spanish double major, and much to my dad's disliking, I took that step class and I was like, wait a minute, I can do this for a living? Sign me up, please. So I changed my major to kinesiology. I don't think I told him for like a year, but he found out eventually. So I changed my major. And at that time, at our student rec center, we had what was called group fitness instructor training. And you went through like a semester course and then you auditioned to be an instructor. And it was quite a process, which was amazing and such a phenomenal learning experience. They taught you how to teach on the 32 count. My mentor, Dayon Woosley, said, if you can teach step, you can teach anything. So we all had to audition with step or kickboxing. They brought you in 3 at a time in front of a panel of judges. You had to all audition. Then you had to go away and you come back and your name was either on the door or it wasn't. And you got hired or you didn't. And so it was such a great experience. But from that, later, after teaching for a few years, the upperclassmen help with group fitness instructor training. So I helped my junior and senior year. I was taught the whole time I was there. I was Dayon Woosley's student assistant. So I loved being, behind the scenes as well. Learned how to put a group fitness schedule together, which was my absolute favorite thing that we did every semester, was color coding the group fitness schedule. But helping with group fitness instructor training, I realized how much I loved teaching the teachers before I even graduated from undergrad. And so then I went to grad school at the University of North Texas, and there I was a graduate assistant. So again, my main job was teaching the underclassmen, especially because we didn't have a group fitness coordinator at that time. So I was really kind of leading the training process, which was my favorite part. And then kind of the story of my life is my husband gets a new job and we move like the next day. So throughout that process, we went from Dallas and we were at Florida State, where I was still in campus recreation. And while we were at Florida State, we redid one of our group fitness rooms and turned it into a bar room, because that was right when bar was just first coming on the scene. And then honestly, kind of naively, we built out the room. And then I went to go find a certification, and there weren't hardly any options at that point that didn't tie you to a franchise, that wasn't like an in studio or cost a heck of a lot more than my college students could pay. So that was really when I had gone through, when we were in Dallas, we actually stayed in Dallas for a little while after grad school, and I ran the group fitness program at a large health club in downtown Dallas, and went through all of my Pilates training with Balanced Body and all the equipment, and started to love bar, took every bar class and every bar certification I could find in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and had been teaching it for a few years by the time we moved to Florida State. And so that was my really first foray into writing my own education, because I had to teach all my students now how to teach bar, because we had this bar studio. So then husband gets a new job, whopping 7 months later after we moved to Florida. So now we're in Austin, Texas, and I take a job as a studio manager of a bar and Pilates studio, who my boss was actually in our training last weekend doing a refresher. So it's so fun how the industry, comes full circle. And one of my main jobs there was training the new instructors and our current instructors, because we had a huge schedule, and we were really passionate about instructors being able to bring their own personality to class, but having enough of a structure. So if someone, dropped in at 9 a.m. or 11 a.m., we all know how it goes with group fitness, or 5 p.m., they still knew that what they were going to get. So I kind of revamped the training that I wrote in Florida State and created, at that point, it was called Pulse Point Bar, and a Pulse Point Bar blueprint. And then my old campus recreation contact started to reach out to me with the same kind of problem. At that point was, hey, there's not a bar certification at this point. Bar Above was just coming on the scene as well, right then. And so before that, there wasn't really an affordable option. And so I started to go and do just in-house trainings, then went through the whole process with ACE and AFA, got accredited. Pulse Point Bar became Pulse Point Bar, which was my first bar program, and had a couple of master trainers, and we did the conference scene for a few years. And then husband gets a new job. We moved to Clemson, South Carolina. And I opened up a fitness studio there. So I owned a brick and mortar studio called Clemson Fitness Company, which is still rocking today. I got to go back in August, and the new owner who taught for me then, Martha, who's doing an amazing job, hosted me for a pumped up strength certification. So again, that was a cool full circle story. And then I'll tell the other side of Tricia and I meeting in Empower.
I was going to say, I want to hear it from your
yes. So I will never forget the day. I could probably go pick out the hotel room, or the hotel ballroom ballroom that we were in, when Mindy and Tricia walked in the room, and I almost puked on stage. I think that was probably only a year or two into presenting, and I still gave myself migraines almost every conference. I was so nervous. I still get so nervous. And Mindy and Tricia walked in, and I don't know if I taught anything I had planned, because I just blacked out. I could even point to where they were standing in relation to me, where I was on the stage when they took the class. And when I left, or when the class was over, they came, and Tricia, being Tricia and so kind, was like, that class was amazing. And I was like, thank you so much for coming to my class. I was probably shaking. I was so excited and honored. So it was an amazing, amazing honor that they would come. And Tricia and I chatted at that conference of just kind of our different philosophies and things like that. And it really took quite a while for everything to come together and decide what that would look like. But we quickly realized that our end goal for our certifications was really the same, what we were trying to accomplish, and the instructor that we were trying to speak to, and the clubs that we were interested in helping get the programming were really the same, and that we could accomplish more together. And I have to tell you, I remember telling my friend who was asking me about, are you sure this is your baby? Are you okay with that? And I was like, I don't know, but I know Tricia is the best person ever, and it's going to be okay if she's the other half of this. And so I dove in knowing that Tricia would make everything okay. And it's been honestly better than I ever could have hoped for, as far as that goes, from a partnership and what we've accomplished with Bar Above. And then from there, let's see, we were in Clemson for about 4.5 years. And then during the week that the world shut down, literally, my husband gets a call from Mississippi State. So we're in the car driving to Mississippi State as half the world is shutting down. I could take my girls to breakfast on Saturday. I couldn't take them to breakfast on Sunday.
Wait, what do you mean shutting down? Are we talking pandemic?
COVID, yes.
Okay,
pandemic,
okay.
Pandemic. Sorry, yes, pandemic. So I'm on the way back, driving home, like trying to shut down our studios for what we thought was like 2 weeks, right?
2 weeks, yeah.
2 weeks, yes. So we move to Starkville in May of 2020. And I have another Tricia moment helping us out all here. I was dragging my feet hardcore about going virtual because I was terrified if we all went virtual. I love the community piece of group fitness. And if we go virtual, are we ever going to be able to fully come back and get that feeling back, right? And so with Tricia's encouragement, we all went virtual. We started teaching virtual trainings, and it was scary at first, but then great. And while in Starkville, because of our schedules and there's not a ton of teaching options there, I opened up a virtual studio. And so I still have my virtual studio and an app called Lauren George Fitness. And we virtually at first launched Pumped Up Strength, which is now one of Fit Pro Programming's programs. So all with Tricia's encouragement. And then a full whopping month ago, we moved to Houston. So now I am in Houston, Texas. And we are rolling with FPP. I also opened a business called Fit Biz Club along the way with my business partner, Mariah Seacrest Comer, where we help other fitness entrepreneurs grow their businesses. And then I've also been adjunct faculty at Clemson University. I taught nonprofit leadership. And then I taught methods of coaching at Mississippi State. So I got to coach the coaches, which was very fun. Played a lot of flag football. It was great.
A lot of flag football?
Yes, we had to coach every sport. So we played every sport throughout the semester. Yes. I
have a question about the meeting, Tricia. Did you know you were being scouted? Like, did you
No.
You didn't know?
No, I had no idea. I had taken a ton of Mindy and Tricia's classes at conferences, and they were there presenting at the conference too. So, and Tricia drops in. She's a great supporter. So she and Mindy drop into people's classes all the time. So no, I had no idea. I probably couldn't think straight anyways.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like, I think I would actually have that experience today, Tricia. So don't just pop in. Like, give me a text first.
Good morning.
Give me a text. I just want to know.
I don't bite ever,
No.
Ever. I will probably never I will never walk into a session to find what I don't like. I always walk away with what I loved. And I guess unless I need to contribute in some way, or someone said, hey, can you evaluate something? I'm always walking into, whether it's a class or it's a session at a conference or an education, I'm usually walking in with my eyes are on what is going really well.
That's great. Yeah.
I'm never looking for what I don't like. And what's funny is when you go in with that mindset, you very rarely find anything you don't like. You're not into that. You're just looking for the gems and the knowledge that someone's dropping on you. So I usually see what I like.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to steer the ship back in the reverse direction. So we're going to go right back to Lauren. And we just kind of heard about her story and all the different layers of her career. And I just want to ask Lauren, like, what are some of the lessons that you've learned along the way? What are some things that you could share with our audience, with our listeners, that might inspire them, encourage them, or, make a light bulb go off in their mind?
I think maybe one of the hardest lessons for me to learn, and maybe one of the most impactful that has changed my career as a fitness professional. As a self-admitted perfectionist, I tend to like to have all of my ducks in a row and to know the outcome when I jump into things, or maybe I should say I used to like to really know, and I needed to see all the steps and the finish line and how it was going to go and all of the things before taking on a new project or starting a new certification, let's say pulse point bar and then bar above. And I realized that there are going to always be so many steps. And a lot of times when you're taking on a big project, you don't see the finish line. And the finish line is probably going to look very different from what you envisioned it being. If you would have asked me when I first got into college, when I first got into kinesiology in college, I would have without a doubt in my body said, I'm going to be a group fitness director at a campus rec center. Like that is my only option. That is what I'm made to do. But because of life circumstances and moving and things like that, other opportunities presented themselves. And so I always say that if you are very passionate about something and it's not going to put your family in a financial hardship, because that is definitely something to consider when going into a new business. If you know the next 3 steps that you need to take to get started on that journey, whether that is teaching a new format or starting a new business or opening a studio or, whatever that might be, then take those first 3 steps and the next 3 and the next 5 will reveal themselves. But it's very easy to say, I'm going to get one more certification before I'm ready, or I'm going to take one more online marketing class, or, I'm going to take X amount of classes, or we need to have X amount of money in the bank account before we do X, Y, and Z. But if you can know those first 3 steps, then start going and you'll get there much faster than you probably think.
I love that you actually quantified it to 3 steps. Like I think about that whole, you don't have to see the top of the staircase thing, but I like that you're like 3, like, don't just jump in if you only know 1.
Right. 3.
You should know 3. I love that. And I love that adage, like, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. And just listening to you makes me think of parenthood. Like,
Yes.
I would have never had children if I thought I had to be a good mom first, like have my life together first. So yeah, that's really so. Okay, what else along the way?
Still me. The other thing I would say, well, this is maybe a more concrete tip, is the value of filming yourself for evaluations, whether that's you filming yourself or your fitness director filming you. There has been so many moments that I watched myself back on camera. So when I very first started teaching, our director filmed us every single semester, and we had to go in and watch ourselves teaching. And I can remember thinking, actually, I said it out loud. I'm like, do I really sound like that? And the graduate assistant was in there and she was like, oh, yeah, you do. As I got more excited back before I knew how to, control pitch and tone and all of those things, the more excited I got in my step class, the squeakier and louder my voice got, right? But you're just having so much fun that you don't notice things like that. I was just having a blast and high kneeing right off my step. And so I would say, as an instructor, especially if you are newer to teaching or maybe a new format, because I feel like we often go to tick words and kind of fall back on some of those habits when our minds are distracted by learning a new format and new choreography and mastering something new, or even just teaching in a new place. And filming yourself is really helpful. And then speaking of teaching in a new place, my other tip would be, as someone who has moved a lot and I've subbed a lot and I've taught in a lot of different places, it's very tempting as a new instructor or as an instructor new at a location to go in and think, okay, I'm going to channel my inner whoever you're subbing for. When I ran the group fitness program at the Baylor Tom Landry Fitness Center, Deborah Puskaric, who is an incredible step instructor, and I grew up like worshiping her step classes at Dallas Mania. I will never forget. Loved her. I found out that she taught at the club that I was now the group fitness coordinator at, and I was like, what? She taught one step class, kind of like what you described, Tricia. She would come in, they'd be like lined up. I'd have to have her steps set out ahead of time, not because of her, she was amazing, but because I had to make sure that there was enough space for everyone that would come in the room. And one time I had to sub for her, and probably the second time in my life, I thought I was going to throw up while I was in the middle of teaching, because I was like, how can I sub for Deborah Puskaric? I'm like, I have to channel my inner Deborah. Where's my bandana? Because she always wore out a bandana. But as an instructor, when you're trying to channel someone else while you're teaching, you just end up way more nervous and flubbing over your words, and you don't have as much fun because you're more worried about what you're saying. And then if you're not having as much fun, your students aren't having as much fun. So I think we can always learn so much from other instructors. And every time I go take someone's class, cueing is probably what I pay attention to the most. And so I'm always like, oh, I love how Ellen said this, or I love how Tricia said this. So we can take those nuggets, but always saying it in our own tone and, really embracing our true self. And that will so help you have more fun when you're teaching, your students have more fun. And when I stopped worrying so much about channeling my inner Shannon Fable or Deborah Pruskerrick or whoever it was, because those are who I took from whenever I was in college all the time, Gay Gasper, I realized how much less nervous I was and how much more fluid the words and cues would come out of my mouth. So that would be one of my number one tips for sure. That took me probably way too long to learn.
That is an awesome tip. And it just feels like it's scary. It takes vulnerability, it takes guts. But then when they like you, they're liking you. Like,
yes,
it's authentic, and it is exhausting to try to it's exhausting to try to be something that you want, that you think people want. It's exhausting because it's not really congruent with who you are. And yeah, that was a really good little nugget. So
thanks.
to our audience, I wanted this podcast with these girls to be very organic. We didn't script out a bunch of things at all. I just said, I'm gonna ask about your life and ask about your life and ask for some tips. So did you have any more, or should we circle to Tricia?
Let's circle to Tricia and I'll think
And
if
you can think
any other good ones come to mind.
Perfect. Okay, Tricia. So
yeah, and I think those were really in terms of fitness, I think some of those are just for me, they speak to me as well. I've always been the kind of instructor that's sort of a steady Eddie, right? And I typically don't hire steady Eddies. I tend to hire, more polarizing characters, right? People that have a stronger pull, if you will. In fact, they have a strong push and they have a strong pull, because those are oftentimes the most successful fitness instructors and personal trainers and leaders. And that's partly because they're not afraid to just fully be themselves, right? They're willing to not worry about who doesn't like them. They're focused on who likes them, which is such a grown-up, wonderful way to be. On the flip side, I was never polarizing it from that perspective. I was always sort of steady Eddie, and I kind of, to this day, teach a very steady cadence of class. I'm not, I'm not funny necessarily. I can be funny. I'm not terribly serious, but I'm not, I'm not this, and I'm not, I'm not drastic. And in the same vein, I had to accept that was who I was, and that I would also grow in my career by just being who I am. And even now, I'll get hired for random gigs, and people are they kind of consider me the every man's person, every person's person, meaning you could take my class and you could be 23, or you could take my class and be 83, and you're going to be comfortable. And you need that personality too. So it took me a long time to not feel like I had to have this loud personality. When I teach, I could just be me, and me isn't boring. It's just not. I'm not going to draw a very polarizing opinion, and that's also okay.
Yeah.
It's you kind of have to accept that too. So it was good to hear you sort of line that up, tee that up, because that's how I feel too. Yeah. Okay. Other lessons. Really that failure is such a huge part of what we do in life, right? We fail. I have a 13-year-old daughter, and every day there's success and failure in that conversation. I feel like total success. Yesterday, I felt so successful. I felt like I nailed it as a parent yesterday. And then this morning I got up and was like, wow, I am back where I belong in the worst parent of the day, worst parent of the week. So I think it's just like everything else in life. You have to really be okay with trying things and sometimes taking big risks and having a plan. To Lauren's point, you need to have a plan. You need to know that you can, if you're going to try something or invest money or invest time, you have to have a plan, but you also don't know that it's going to work, right? You have to invest and have faith in your concepts and your ideas and who you are, and your reputation, that it'll work out. And then also step back and realize not everything's going to be hugely successful. I was a part of a project with Amazon called Amazon Halo, and millions and millions of dollars went into it, and it failed. And that was a huge lesson for me. I'm driving to set one day, and we're on a motion picture set, and I have a contract for 6 months ahead of me, and we've got 30 people working for us every day, and it shut down in 5 minutes, so even big companies make huge mistakes. And even my gym that didn't necessarily make money, when I shut down, I didn't owe any money.
It could have if you didn't give all the memberships away.
Exactly. But I think it's just important to be decisive and take some jumps and know that you might fail, but nobody in my life is counting my failures. I don't know one person who remembers. I'm trying to think of some really funny thing. Oh, I had an exercise video called My Best Friend's Workout, which I'll try to post some videos of, which was, again, we had a jib, we had 2 cameras, it was the most expensive shoot because it was 5 dogs and 5 fitness instructors teaching their different types of dogs how to exercise with your dogs. And in my head, I met with food companies for dogs. I met with pet stores, and everyone was like, this is a brilliant idea. And we filmed it and pre-sold it and did all the things. I went to dog shows. I did all these things. And in the end, pet owners weren't really interested in what I was selling. I mean, I can't tell you, I was like in a booth and people were walking by like, I'm not buying it. And then the other part is conceptually, I saw it as something that they would watch and then go out and do. And that conceptually didn't work. So it was a huge failure from that perspective of, I think, the producers probably lost $30,000 on it. Like, that's scary and sad. But if you looked at the percentage of dog owners, had 7% of dog owners said, that is amazing, I want to buy it, it would have been a massive success. But it didn't work. And nobody in my family's like, oh my God, remember My Best Friend's Workout? Everyone's like, that was such a beautiful video. And now all of us have lost the dogs that were in that. We have these beautiful videos of our dogs. So again, I mean, I've succeeded as many times as I've failed, I would say. I think it's a pretty equal.
That's so interesting. I just look at you as a mountain of successes, but that's just to making your point for you. I remember you made me just think about, I can't remember where we were. I never can. I'm like, whatever city we were in, because like, aren't we in another city every like few weeks? But maybe it was Reston, but we were on a panel and you were talking about like seasons and how they prepare you, like they are an education in what's coming next in your life. And like the way you framed it up for us that day was really beautiful. Like
I remember that actually because there's a few people in the industry that I think know how to step into the next season, right? It's like, it's okay to move into the next season of your career, right? It doesn't mean that it doesn't say anything about your age. It doesn't say anything about what you used to do. It's just that everything we do in present moment is simply preparing us for the next season. And if you're not willing to step into the next season, if you're not willing to accept the next season, right? Like you deny it or you're afraid of it, it's hard to move into it. And I see a lot of people in our industry sometimes stay in the same space because that's all they know. And they're really afraid to season next. There's a book, and now I'm going to totally forget it. And I'll send it to you. But essentially the writer talks about the idea, why is her name leaving me? She was starting the murder show, How to Get Away with Murder. She's so amazing too. I'm sorry. I'll look it up. Anyway, she writes.
We're gonna put it in the show notes. She's gonna when the episode's over, she's gonna remember.
I'm gonna remember like if I Yes. So she has a biography and she talks about seeing the different seasons of your life. So, whether it's by decades or times in your life, seeing yourself on a relay race, like you're your own relay team, right? So as you pass the baton to the next version of yourself, you're just ushering them through, right? And so you're just passing, you're your own relay team, and the next version of you, and then there's a final lap. There's a person that's going to take the final lap, and that version is usually the best version of yourself. And I thought that was so brilliant, you know.
I just got goosebumps. That is so beautiful. And the not being willing, the paralysis mode is also a decision. It's also a decision. It's just one that keeps us stuck in the same place.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And in our industry, it's okay also to get older. I think that's the other thing that's interesting. In my 40s now, it's like I have a lot of fitness friends who are like, I don't want to be the instructors in their 40s or their 50s or their 60s. And what's so interesting is the more that I kind of own that and talk about it, and, you know, I'm not afraid of it, you know, like I have friends that are in fitness that did not want to talk about perimenopause or menopause or any of those things. And I'm like, let's talk about it openly. What's so interesting is that I've been booked for work that I don't think I would have ever been booked for, because I was like owning that, right? I've been booked as on-air talent because I'm not afraid. I'm not trying to pretend I am my 30-year-old self, right? And so there's every on-air production, everyone that's going to produce something for consumers needs somebody in each phase, right? In each season. And so just saying like, this is the season I'm in, I got booked work. And they pay you more because they're like, well, I'm booking the one with 30 years of experience. There. So, you know, I think not being afraid of it.
It speaks to that authenticity piece anyway. We are getting older. I'm getting older. I'm 48, you know, I'm getting older and I'm having arthritis and things happen. And I just think in general, as we age in our industry as instructors, I do think we get better. I mean, our bodies might not work as well for, you know, reasons like I just said, arthritis or something like that. But the more we experience life, and I don't even just mean teaching and education and group fitness, but just life, loss, pain, children, empty nests, like the more life we have, the more we can relate and connect to people on a profound level in our, and so I might have looked a lot cuter teaching in my 20s, but I'm connecting to people better now. And that's important to me.
I mean, I even remember in my 20s, I've been teaching at the same studio for a really long time, but when the ladies would come in, they'd be like, turn the fans on. And I'd be like, we haven't even warmed up. What is wrong with you? It's so fun now, even though I'm still not a fan of turn the fan on person. Now I get it. My friends are all going through it, you know, like, okay. But it's funny, like you go into that group fitness room and you're like, oh gosh, you just had a baby 6 months ago. You're still peeing your pants. Great. Let's deal with that. Like, you know, like you have so much more, you know, empathy and, you know, all of those things. Somebody going through a divorce or somebody going through cancer treatment, you're like, what can I do to make your life better? Where, you know, when you're younger, it's hard to conceptually have the empathy for everyone, right? So yeah, I think it makes us even stronger.
And I think it makes us appreciate how hard it can be for some people to get to the group fitness room, right? Like what else could be going on in their life, because we may have been there at some point, even if that's just going to a rough patch. And so I think it gives us empathy for them, but I think it also makes us so extremely grateful too for our classes, even more so now. We understand, you know, you may have been up all night with a new kid, or, you know, have a sick kid home from school, or be dealing with taking care of a parent, and you still made it to class for you, for your community. And so I definitely feel like I'm so much more grateful for every class and every community experience, because I know it takes work to get there.
100%.
Do either have any more like burning tips you want to give the listeners? If so, great. If not, I want to ask you about your big new recent announcement. Any other big tips? Or should we dive into the new?
Let's dive in. I think I gave all my.
Okay, so we saw the big announcement about Fit Pro programming, and I just want you to tell us about it. So what's happening and what are you doing now together? And tell us like a little bit about each of the programs too.
Yeah. So why don't I do the background and then you can tell about the programs.
Sure.
So when Lauren partnered with Leslie and I. She partnered with us under a brand called Savier Fitness. And Savier Fitness has been in the infomercial and products business as well as the education business. And I started working for Savier about 15 years ago and have been the education director for that period of time. I've been around for a long time. And so what we've specialized in is providing sort of affordable, much very similar to what you do, which is affordable, dynamic education for fitness instructors that they can teach in every gym, studios, small, big, JCCs, YMCAs. And then there were always products and services to support that. We typically stay in the lanes of mainstream education. So the big buckets that we know the gyms have to have versus the sort of like sexier, funner stuff. Like we're not in the striptease mode, right? We're doing like the sort of categories that we know that gyms need. So when our current CEO decided to retire, it was decision time for Lauren and I because we really, for a period of time, have sort of operated.
It was the baton. It was
Yeah,
the baton to the next leg of the relay.
Exactly. And we'd really been operating the company for a while as it was in terms of like creative, operationally, and we have a good team. And we also have, 110 program specialists is what we call them that work with our team on different programs. And so we knew we had that in place. We both just have more to do in the education world. Like we both know that we want to produce more education and we like the sort of the path we've led, the business model that we've built. We also know that we want to do more than just education. So we're stepping into production pieces. We're stepping into other parts of the industry as we go into it. And, and the other thing is that it's a very collaborative operation, and it always has been. Savier has always wanted to be as collaborative as possible. So, when I first met you, or I've met, we work with Zumba when we need to, like, we're all very much like in the space of fitness instructors who get bar certified through FitPro programming or previously Savier Fitness also should do warrior strength. Also, like, more is more. Like you're
not
if you are
high.
Right. And if you're a fitness instructor who's going to last 30 years, you can't just teach one thing. It really is difficult. And I know there are those birds that do that, but it's so rare, and really sort of widening your education and what you teach is so important. So that was sort of a no-brainer. And then of course, because Lauren and I have built and worked together on projects already under Savier and sort of learned how each other moves. So Lauren is a perfectionist and all the right ways, right? So she is going to have her eye on the details, the things that I will not. Like I can be detail oriented when I have to be, but it's not my strength. She also has the ability to kind of look at different revenue streams in a really good way, and has that communications and marketing head space that even that if that's not what she studied in school, that's certainly where her brain is now. I would say, if anything, you could probably go back and get that degree, make your dad happy, right?
Yeah.
Speaking of which, my parents didn't speak to me for 6 months when I went to college because I was on a full ride marketing scholarship. And I was, of course, like way more interested in dance and teaching group fitness. And now my mother, who's the only one alive now, always says to everyone, the only child that really loves what she does and is happy most of the time is this one. So it all comes full circle, even if they don't talk to you for months on end. Anyway, I digress. So we just decided that we didn't want the company to be sold to another entity, and that it didn't make sense for us. We both are poised in a position in our careers to take to take on the brands. So that's why we made the offer to purchase and acquire a vast majority of the education under Xavier. We didn't purchase the equipment arm of it. Our dear friend and the previous operations director, Stu, is actually going to own and operate the equipment side of it. So it's like we all, he passed it on internally to all of us. So we're only a month in. So operationally, we're just getting it together. And honestly, it feels like Lauren sent me a meme the other day. It was like a little kid on a bike, like, and then like popping a wheelie. Like that is how every day has been since January 1 for the two of us together. But that's sort of all of us. I'm sure it's the same way for you. So it's been great so far. So that's the background. I'll let Lauren tell you about that.
Sounds perfect. I mean, it actually ties in with some of the other things you already talked about today with, having faith and it just sounds like it's the natural next, like your hand was already back. The baton was going right into it. It sounds just perfect
pass off. Yeah.
So Balatone is the one, well, just give us a little rundown on each of the programs, but Balatone is the one that I didn't know. I didn't even know that was part of the Xavier library. So take us through your programs. Like, what are they like?
Yes. Well, and I need to add it too. Tricia always does such a great job about talking about other people. But speaking of Balatone and the different programs, I may be the detail oriented one when it comes to website design and the numbers. But what Tricia does so beautifully, and what I think really is the icing on the cake for why programs are successful, and not just from a certification standpoint, but from when they go into the clubs, is her ability to see, like she talked about earlier, how do we translate this from education into instructors being able to go in and help their students feel successful. And she is incredible at the programming side, but then also the networking side. And when I say networking, I more mean making sure all of the right people are at the table and then elevating them to do what they do best and to generate amazing programming. And so Balatone, I think, is a beautiful example of that. It is a ballet inspired, so no ballet skills needed. I can vouch for that. I did hip hop, not ballet, unless I had to. And I love teaching Balatone, but a ballet inspired cardio class. And it does beautifully bring together those people that do want to channel their inner ballerina from when they, were back in their younger days dancing or still dancing. Also those that just want a great low impact cardio workout that is really, really fun. And then from an instructor standpoint, I think the secret sauce for Balatone is how easy it is to teach once you learn the formula. And that's why I think it is successful as a program, because instructors can really feel successful and like they've mastered it as an instructor, which sometimes dance, and I've taught a lot of dance, and that's one of the ones that even though I love dance, I would spend so much time working on choreography because the perfectionist in me needed to memorize it just like down to the 8 count, right? And so Balatone, when I go in to teach a Balatone class, I feel like we can just go in and enjoy it. And Elizabeth Lennart is our education lead for Balatone, and she is also a counselor and an instructor. And so she does a beautiful job of really weaving the kind of mental or mind-body empowerment piece into Balatone. And we are re-rolling out a new version of Balatone, or I shouldn't say a new version, let's go part two, called Encore, all about how to set Balatone to the music verse chorus style and make it really kind of that grand finale. And so we have one of those certifications coming up led by Elizabeth. So just kind of taking it to the next level as far as a great experience for our students. And then our other brands are Bar Above, obviously was our first one. And Bar, I think we're all probably very familiar with what Bar looks like, but one of the things, or a few of the things that we really try to focus on when it comes to our programming is giving them that structure as an instructor, but still letting them bring their own personality to the table. So giving some leeway as to
Freedom.
how you order the classes. Yeah, exactly. Freedom. And when we put out choreography every month, we have a ballet fusion and a Pilates fusion and a yoga fusion for our yoga lovers, and a cardio fusion and a musicality fusion if you want to set it to music. So we try to give people a way that they can really shine in their barre classes as an instructor and feel empowered to do so, while also, of course, including the science and the fundamentals of what needs to go into a barre class to keep it safe and effective and well-rounded. And then our Barre Above also has Barre Above Pilates Focus, which has a heavier focus on the Pilates component. It is in a lot of club Pilates, which we love to partner with. And so
I didn't know that. We have one right near my house.
Yes.
Okay.
And so sometimes it's taught part on the barre, part on the mat, sometimes part on the barre, part on the reformer. And Leslie does a beautiful job with that. And then we have a whole team of program specialists that teach that all over the country as well. And then we also have Pumped Up Strength, which we launched in 2021, which is our group strength class. And Pumped Up Strength focuses on creating what we call dynamic functional flows. So where we integrate the upper and lower body and combined exercises into one final flow at the end of every block. And it is set to really fun, high energy music. We've been lucky enough to partner with Fit Radio to create custom playlists for our Pumped Up Strength classes. So our goal there is to bring the fun to group strength. So we want you to have as much fun in the strength class as you do in your cardio and your dance classes.
Yes, thank you. Yes. Because sometimes we think like we all know we need to lift weights.
Right.
Like it's like we know we need to go to the dentist, but it can be fun too.
Exactly. So that is us in a nutshell.
Oh, that's so awesome. Okay, so ladies, we like to wrap this podcast up with a quote unquote confession, which is, I don't know, maybe it's serious, maybe it's tender, maybe it's funny, just something that you want to confess to the crew. Who wants to go?
Oh man. I'm like, okay, let me think.
I can take your way if you want
me
to
go.
start.
Now,
Okay.
the one I was going to do is kind of already been disclosed, so I'll let you.
So maybe this is confession part confession, part tip. So whenever I first started teaching, if we've worked out together, any of our listeners here probably know that I love choreography. I eat, sleep, dream, breathe choreography. My kids can count to the 8 count because we talk about it so much here at the house. But when I was in college, I can't remember if I was a junior or a senior, I was teaching a double step class with 2 steps. And at the end of class, you got a partner, and one partner was on one side of the step, and the other partner was on the other side of the step, and you would do the choreography, and it was all choreographed from corner to corner. So you went all around the step towards each other, and it was awesome, right? Until it wasn't, till it really wasn't awesome. And I had a girl take the class one time, and rightfully so. And she was in the step class, and the choreography was way ridiculously over the top. I will confess that 100%. And she left in a not very happy state in the middle of my class. There was some loud putting away of the step. And I was so distraught because I felt so bad that she didn't like the class. I can remember crying in the closet. There's 2 group fitness rooms. In the middle, there was a closet. And so I tried to hold it together. And after class, my mentor was actually teaching the next room over. So I'm like sobbing hysterically in the closet. But I will never forget that moment. And from then on, thinking choreography is only as good, as you can break it down and help everyone to feel successful. Now, of course, there are classes that are going to be more highly choreographed, and maybe that's indicated on the schedule. But clearly in that class, I did not do a good enough job breaking it down or making her feel successful that she wanted to stay and take the class. So that will be a core memory in my instructor moment, is when she did not feel great about the class and left, and I was very distraught. But now I will always think of that when coming up with choreography, is can you lead someone through it?
Totally. That was a very, very, very painful gift. It was a gift.
Yes, exactly.
I would have been crying in the closet too. Definitely.
Yeah.
There were lots of tears.
Okay, so mine is just a funny story, because now we can end it with funny, which is Lauren's heard this one. Is so funny. So it's a week into the pandemic. Washington State was like the first state to go dark and close down, and every business is dark inside very, very, very quickly. And so I immediately was going to go online, and I'm about a week in, and I'm teaching via Zoom, and I'm in the gym that's shut down. I've barely figured it out. I'm not even using a camera. I'm just using my computer, and I'm far behind, and I can barely see the squares, but I don't have a projector, nothing. And I'm like, I am amazing. I'm killing it. I'm like, I can do this. I can totally do this. I'm watching the screen, and all of a sudden I see everybody's arms like waving at me. And I'm like, what did it? No, I thought I had everything set up. I checked the things. Oh, there was a woman completely naked who's a regular, who still takes my classes to this day, in her 80s. She was completely naked, not realizing.
Wait. This is the best confession we've ever had.
It's so good.
Yeah.
I can't even. She was naked accidentally?
She was naked for bar. I want to just point out what second position is like.
It gets
Just
better.
want to throw that visual. And so everyone's waving because she doesn't know, because she didn't know she'd click the button. So I walk up and I'm like, oh my God, I won't use her name. And I'm like, so-and-so, you're naked or whatever. So she clicks the don't show camera, the little video, stop video. And this is the best part of the whole story.
This is so good.
She came back.
Wait.
She put clothes on.
She put clothes on, and 5 minutes later, turned her camera right back on, came and did class.
I love her. I love her. She's amazing. She's like, I'm getting my workout in. I wanted to do it naked, but I'm still going. Oh my God.
And the best part is, after it was over, she said, oh, sorry guys. I didn't realize I had my camera on. And then she said, it was just like we were all in the locker room together. And the funniest part is, I had these two cisgender males that have taken my classes forever. And Michael is like this famous rock star musician. He's the bass player for a very famous musician. He leans in and he goes, I never went into the women's locker room, nor did I want to.
He did not say that. Did he
So
say
good.
that? He said
So
that.
good.
She was like, it's no big deal. He's like, yeah, it is a big, let's keep our clothes on in the future, because I don't go into the women's locker room and I don't try.
No one's ever going to top that. No one's going to want to be on my podcast anymore. They're not going to top that.
Mic drop, Tricia. Mic drop.
Yeah, mic has dropped. So that was a weekend. So,
Oh my goodness. Okay. So listen, I should have really said this in the beginning of the episode, but the two of you are like so impressive to me. I mean, you know how I feel about you, but what you both do that is like, I don't know how you do it so well. You have this aura and presence about you that is so professional and polished and refined. Okay, that's one piece. But somehow you equally balance it with this down-to-earth, authentic, approachable vibe. And I just think it's really hard to do that well. I really think it's hard to look like this consummate professional boss all the time, and yet also just come across as so just kind, and I'm here, and if you want to sit, like, it's just really amazing. And I appreciate, so when you were talking about your programs, Lauren, about the different programs, and you talked about when Pumped Up Strength was born, that's kind of about the time, similar, right, in the start of the pandemic, that I was getting going. And it really affected me to have both of you right early on, right when I was starting. Like, I felt you cheering for me. I just did all the time. And it made a difference in how I, felt like I could enter the room. So I really appreciate both of you. I just think you're the cat's meow, and I am excited. I thought about asking you to come on separately, but then I saw your announcement. I'm like, oh, let's bring them on together. So
well, thank you.
Tell everybody where they can follow you and find you, and we want them all to come to IDEA. So social handles, it's Lauren George Fitness.
I'm Lauren George Fitness, yes, on social.
And I'm just at Murph Madden, Murph like the dog, Madden like the game, and then at Barbub and at Pumped Up Strength are our company socials. We try to do something on there every day. And then our website, barbub.com, pumpedupstrength.com, ballatone.com. You can find all those things as well.
Yeah, I'll post them all. I'll put them all in the show notes. And then, I mean, we'll see each other here and there all over the country. But Tricia's role there, it's new. Like, it's a new role. I mean, I know you've been heavily involved, but it's technically a new role. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Idea World is this year, July 12th, 13th, 14th. I may have that. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I haven't been looking at the dates. I've been looking at the blocks of time and the hours and the modalities, the presenters. That conference takes place in LA this year, and we have a robust dance program. We have a robust mind-body program that you're a part of, and then we have a category now called Fight Club that you're a part of, and we have a lot of pure strength courses for some of our personal trainers. So we have a really, we've focused this year on specialization. So if you are a specialist, you're somebody who is knee deep in a particular type of career path in fitness, we really wanted to answer that question. So we think we've brought together some of the best. I have about 25 new educators coming from all over the world to join our education team, and some really fun stuff like LA Live, a dance session with LA's best dance instructors, a heels class because it's so hot right now.
So fun.
Not with me.
So, did you know that your sales manager, Steve Roth, moved here? Like, he moved here. Like, I had lunch with him the other week. It was amazing.
I mean, that's so good. He and I talk all the time. Love that guy.
Yeah, he was awesome. But he was talking to me about all the cool things, ideas, doing to bring in more people and all this stuff. And I just want to say, like, ideas kind of, at least the way I, coming up into the industry, was always the one. It was always kind of like the Mecca. Like, it was always kind of one. You're gonna go to. I tell all my warriors, I tell the community all the time that if you live near a city that I'm like Dallas, if you live near Dallas, that one. If you live near here, but if you don't know or you're going to IDEA. That's the hub. That's like where we will have like our summit, is what I call it. So
yeah. It's the Super Bowl of fitness, right? It's where we all come together, and it's where famous prominent figures in our industry like you, as well as past prominent figures and future leaders, are all there. So, and then it's just, it's like a magical unicorn of an experience as far as I'm concerned.
Magical is right. That's right. I love that.
Yeah.
It should be.
Well, I can't wait to have both of you. I'm so excited.
Yes, we will see you. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'm so glad we got to hear about the Naked Girl on Zoom. That just made the whole podcast. And we will see you guys when we see you, hopefully at IDEA, if not before. Thank you.
Yes.
So much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye now.
Bye.
Thank you for joining in on the Confessions of a Group X Instructor podcast. If you're interested in becoming a warrior instructor, go to warriorinstructors.com. But if you want more and found this episode amazing, please give us a rating. And with a simple click to subscribe, we'll invite you back to our next episode. So remember, be brave, be bold, be blessed. And above all, listen, learn, love.